Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review the 2008 film Speed Racer. Immediately when I say that, realizing that I have watched this film and now I am reviewing said film, reasonably to me, uh, I would say that this movie was just an X amount of time, legitimately just eating up of time. Like, hey, I had X amount of time to sit around and watch this movie, and so that's what I did. Uh, really, it doesn't go anything beyond that. It's not like, oh, I learned something about Speed Racer, or oh, I got really like something really legitimately out of this film, or oh, now I have a much more appreciation of Speed Racer. Wow, was that nice? Like no, I honestly got like none of that out of this film. We end up having it to where reasonably, the only thing that I enjoyed about this movie is they actually have the guy that actually did the voice of Speed Racer in this movie somehow, and I'll have you figure that out. When eventually you go and see it, or if you have seen it, you'll be like, oh yeah, they do have the voice actor in here, and here's where he was. Because of course, like I would bizarrely just like I've never really watched the animated Speed Racer thing, um, so I have nothing to compare the animated thing with this. Because recently I've never watched it in my life. Like I've seen like every once in a while I'll see like some like cut of some kind of Speed Racer thing, and I've heard the voice, but I've never actually legitimately watched a single episode of Speed Racer because I never was like I'm like an anime that is something about racing. I don't think that's gonna be all that exciting, and I never went into it and I never watched it. Uh, so really, I would say on top of this, like Speed Racer, like it's kind of obvious that I wasn't the target audience for this movie. Like to me, this kind of gives me like the feels of like Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern movie. Like it's a movie where it's like, well, hey, it's okay to have gone through and watched this thing, but like I didn't get anything beyond that of just going like, man, like I really need to have like watched this countless times over or get back to it again or whatever. Like this movie was like like compared to Green Lantern, like this movie was very predictable. Like even parts of Green Lantern, like you could have told, like you could have, I could have easily figured out of like, well, they're gonna spend a lot of time on Hal's origin story, and towards the tail end of the movie, we're gonna have certain person have a certain ring being put on their finger, and so on and so forth, and like now I just need to figure out like who exactly, like why do we even have to had to invested in the villain for this first movie. And I kind of feel the same with this movie. Like every little bit of something that I felt about Green Lantern, I feel about this movie as well, where like the villain was just kind of just there, but I didn't really care. Uh, we have it to where like the villain kind of justifies the means, but they could have also not had that villain in there at all, and nothing would have mattered. Nothing would have changed, uh, story wise. Going into this movie, there is some kind of thug element going on. Plus, there's also some bizarre ninja moment going on, which didn't make sense to me. Yeah, A lot of interesting things going, or interesting. Uh, that's being kind. There's a lot of things going on in this movie that uh, really does not appeal to a guy like me at all. Uh, Even for the aspect of like, oh, it's a racing. I don't really care for racing films. Like, really, for me, I didn't care for the Fast and the Furious movies. I think I've seen almost every single one of them, which is hilarious for me to say that. It's like, well, why did you see like 8 of those, 9 of those, 20 bajillion of those Fast and Furious films if you're not interested in any one of them? Like, I just felt like I'm a guy that just had time to kill, but also it's like, well, when you hear that there is a good Fast and the Furious movie, then you're just like, well, now I have to watch from the very first Fast and the Furious film to make my way up to the actual good one. And so then you have to watch an entire marathon of all the other garbagey Fast and the Furious ones to get up to the good one. And then be like, yay, I got to the good one. Woohoo! Because heaven forbid anybody really thoroughly enjoyed maybe Too Fast, Too Furious, or maybe even Tokyo Drift, or whatever the heck happened after any of those, or in between any of those things, whichever. So, going into this, I would say that this movie is really predictable. It's really like it's just kind of an eating up of time. And so I guess that's all that I would have to say for this movie in a very cryptic like sense. Like there's nothing that I could come out of this movie saying that like I enjoyed this or I thought like this was trying to go into a like I guess I could say like this movie tries to go and take risks and I can applaud them for that. It tries to do some interesting things with a race movie and I can applaud them for that. It tries to man, I'm really scraping at the bottom of the barrel for compliments here. Uh, this movie, this movie makes a exciting build up, a good build up of a movie, and I think that's all I could say about this film in a cryptic like sense. It's like it has a good build up. We'll just say that. That yeah, it's just there's nothing else other than that to applaud this movie for because everything else is just like yeah, it was a predictable movie that just wasn't exactly a thing that was for me. It was made for probably a younger audience or just anyone that would go and eventually watch this movie, which eventually I guess was me at some point. But I just wanted to see what kind of direction this movie was heading in. And it was kind of interesting how in this film also there was like cusses being thrown here and there. And I'm like, shouldn't they have tried to make this movie as like PG as humanly possible? Shouldn't they have like tried to make it like G rated or something? So that way like this movie should have been set up for like straight up kids. There should not have been one cuss word uttered in this movie, I think, because that should have been like their straight up target audience because I don't feel like this movie was set up for like, oh man, this movie should have been rated R. Yeah, just see the carnage and the blood and the guts and the murder and the killing and the no. This movie should have obviously been set up for a rated TVG whatever audience or whoever. It should have been like catered to babies, or it should have been catered to young adults, severely young. Uh, the younger, the better. So, with that said, I spent 10 minutes really talking about Speed Racer. So let's get into the spoilers. Because yeah, I didn't expect for me to spend 10 minutes talking about this movie in a very cryptic like sense. So spoiler time! Spoiler time! It's about that time again to spoil Speed Racer. So I don't know if anybody's going to view this, but thank you if you end up doing so. Because reasonably, I'm like, yeah, people probably should have seen this coming from a mile away about this movie. But, anyways, let's go into spoilers. So, we end up seeing a young speed racer that does not give a crap about school. All he cares about is having the ability to draw him racing or imagine him racing. He has this imagination where he's just racing his car, and we end up having the teacher kind of like looking over off to the side and like, Speed Racer? Because his actual name is Speed Racer. His name isn't like Steve or Bob or whatever. His legitimate name is Speed Racer. So I guess he was just like his parents were just like, dude, you're gonna become a speed racer. Like you're going to become like we birthed you to become behind the wheel, if you know what I mean. And so we end up having the teacher seeing a speed racer, just imagining that he's doing this race, and he's like, yeah, I'm racing. And so we have his teacher that goes and complains to Speed Racer's mom. Well, yeah, like his head's up in the clouds. He's just like, all he cares about is racing. He doesn't care about anything else. And so we have it to where his mom is just like, nah. It's like, sorry, he's born to be a racer. That's all that he was born to be. So we end up having Speed Racer's brother Rex going and like spending time with Speed Racer, bringing Speed Racer like behind the wheel and like having him like race with Speed Racer, kind of like showcasing that eventually, hey kid, this is gonna be you one day. And so we eventually find out that Rex, who had been a very accomplished racer, and uh, that he was like really, really good. We end up having it to where one day Rex ends up uh, leaving his home, leaving to go off to do something away from his family, to go and be a part of something else, which eventually uh, has him to be killed off, to eventually find out what eventually happens with Rex somewhere in this story, mysterious as it will be. We are come on. Yeah, it's so mysterious. So we are to show current time Speed Racer, and he, of course, is just blazing through and beating everybody in this race, to where we have all these announcers just over and over and over again just saying like how great Speed Racer is. We have the original Speed Racer who did the voiceover of it, like being one of the announcers. I'm like, yeah, like that's cool. Like I never watched a thing of Speed Racer, but that voice is kind of like undeniable, that like I haven't, like I had seen him somehow somewhere, I think. Excuse me. Like Speed Racer like becomes a meme at some point, or Speed Racer like eventually like is a pop culture thing, and so you technically can't avoid uh getting little snidbits or gifs or whatever of Speed Racer somewhere in the ether of things. But yeah, so like I'm familiar with the voice and I connected with it. So going into here, so we end up having since Speed Racer is just the best, just hands down the best racer out there. We have it to where seemingly that there is a sponsor that is really interested in Speed Racer. So we end up having a sponsor that I think has something to do with cereal and uh, I'm trying to see where this guy's name is. Uh, um, Not finding it. Oakley Dokley. So the main villain in this movie, yeah, isn't even in the. I can't find him in the IMDb. Isn't that horrible? Uh, yeah, can't even find him in here. Okay, well that's interesting. Well, we could just Oh wait, Royalton. There we go. Luckily, Google saved the day on that one. So we have Royalton, who is to come a calling to Speed Racer to say, hey, like, I want to sponsor you. I don't want to change anything. Like, I just want to just help you get further along than where you were before. And so we end up having Royalton bringing the family to his humble abode to showcase how hard that they train all their other racers and all the stuff that they are going to be able to do for Speed Racer. They end up just giving Speed Racer a suit and tie and just telling him, oh, hey, like, whatever happens here, whatever your decision is, like, you can keep this suit. And so we end up having it to where Royalton is like, well, hey, Speed Racer, like, what is your decision? Do you want to be a part of this conglomerate, this whatever? Like, do you want to be a part of us, or do you just want to be by yourself? So Speed Racer is like, you know what? Like, I don't think I can quite make a decision like right here and now. And we have it to where like Royalton is like, well, hey, well, yeah, that's great and all, but you know. And so Speed Racer's like, well, yeah, but I just can't. And then like Royalton is like, well, hey, like you don't have to come with a decision right now. You can take your time, mow it over, and we end up having Speed Racer like coming to the decision uh, to eventually he's like talking to his mom, his dad, his chimp friend that he has with his brother, and so on and so forth, and we end up having it to where Speed Racer makes the consensus to Royalton that he is not interested at all in sponsorship. And we have it to where Royalton is like, well, you've made a horrible decision because now that you did not go with me, I'm going to make it to where you no longer exist. Like, I'm going to ruin all your chances. I'm going to boo-hoo on you. Like, we have it to where Royalton is laying out exactly what's going to happen with Speed Racer. That uh, that Royalton is going to guarantee that Speed Racer is going to lose this race to not be able to get into the big enchilada race, the big race of the year. We have it to where Royalton is guaranteeing that Speed Racer is not going to make this race. And we have it to where like Royalton also is also like guaranteeing every single little bit of everything that's going to happen to Speed Racer is going to come true. We have it to where Royalton is mentioning that that Speed Racer's father is going to go under inspection and quite possibly go to jail for any number of things and so on and so forth. And so we end up having to where Speed Racer is like, oh my god, like, so if I would have made a deal with you, I would have been making a deal with the devil. Like, it's a good thing that I said no. Goodbye, sir. And so we have Speed Racer taking the moral high road to eventually end up at the road that Royalton had basically mentioned. So after this race is over, Royalton had basically mentioned that all of these races were rigged and that reasonably Royalton had bought a piece of thing to signify really how races were really and truly done and so on and so forth. That money is the way of which that racing is being done and so on and so forth. So while while Speed Racer is in the locker room being crushed about his loss, he ends up turning to one of the past previous racers, Ben Burns, and he asked him, he's like, well, were the races really and truly rigged? Like, were they rigged all along? And Ben turns to Speed Racer and he's like, well, in all honesty, yes. Like, we had it to where me and one other guy had this really big rivalry, and there was a whole reason behind that to just make these races much more exciting, and so that's why everything always worked out between the two of us or the one of us or whatever. And so Speed Racer's heart just sinks, and he's like, oh man, like, all that I knew about real racing was a lie. And so we end up finding out that this character called Racer Rex, is to try and save other racers from basically being like tortured, kidnapped, taken for money and stuff along those lines. We eventually have Racer Rex going and trying to save trying to save another racer trying to save another racer because I don't have the name on me. And so while we end up having this racer being saved, we eventually find out that Teijo Togokan, Teijo Togokan, or Teijo Togokan. I don't know how to pronounce the name. He's the guy that was in Ninja Assassin, so on and so forth. So we end up having Racer X saving this Teijo, and so we end up having Racer X coming to Speed Racer with his detective inspector or whatever his name is. And so we end up having Racer X coming to Speed Racer and saying, like, hey, like, how about you come with us to try to get Teijo to win this race? This kind of underground, unsanctioned race that will help catapult this racer into this Grand Prix race. So, because I guess like there's some people that have to qualify through the normal routes, but then there's also another separate way of people getting qualified. So we end up having it to where, so while Racer X and Speed Racer are racing within this thing, we end up finding out that seemingly Speed Racer realizes it's like, well, hey, a lot of the things that Speed Racer does like seems very familiar. We even get it at some point where both uh, Speed Racer and Razor X are like racing one another, and eventually uh, Speed Racer ends up kind of knocking Racer X for a loop, and so on and so forth. Within like not the same race, but in a different kind of thing where Speed Racer is just racing around, and Racer X is just kind of racing him because he has nothing better to do. Uh, so we have it to where in this race there is some underhanded things going on. We have some people with some tricks up their sleeve. We end up having uh, a snake oil racer who dumps off oil out of the back of his race car. We end up having people doing all kinds of trickery and stuff like that to uh, kill people's tires, and so eventually Speed Racer ends up going and giving himself a brand new set of tires to where he can keep on racing. We eventually have it uh, to where John Goodman, Pop Pop or whoever his name is, kind of didn't want to be in any aspect of this race because this race um, had killed Rex before, and so we end up having it to where now when Speed Racer is in this race, they're assuming or assessing that they are going to seek out the same fate. Like Speed Racer is going to seek out the same fate as Rex did, and he's going to die. So eventually, we have it to where Speed Racer is going into this race, and then eventually we have it to where uh, uh, Pop Pop and Speed Race's brother realize that Speed Racer is a part of this race, and so because we have it to where Pop Pop doesn't want to watch this race at all, but we eventually have Spriddle, 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 the younger one, the younger son, watching this race, realizing that Speed Racer is in this race, and then so eventually they are watching over him. They're watching over him, trying to make the best out of this race. So Pop Up eventually, once this race is over and Tejo has won, we have it to where Pops goes to the race and is like, well, hey, like, you took my race car and you raced in this race, and like, what did they do with my car? What do these guys do with my car? Like, I bet it didn't perform to the best of its ability, and we end up having it towards Speed Racer says, well, yeah, there were some times where like the turning wasn't exactly right or was kind of stiff or whatever, and Pops is like, I'm gonna work on it, and so we eventually have it to where uh, so Speed Racer and Racer X are out of this race. They're not like they were just going to try and get Taijo qualified so he could be a part of this race. So when Tejo ends up winning this race, and so we end up having uh, the Royalton calling this family and saying, well, like I want to basically buy out this company because I'm threatened that this guy is going to win this race. And so we have Royalton who buys out the Tejo company. And so, excuse me. So we end up having Tejo decide that he wants no part of this race. The only reason why he was going to win this race was just so that way they could drive the stock up on uh, their company, so that way Royalton would buy them out. And so Tejo has zero interest in even going into this race. So Speed Racer's like, oh, well, like, the good guys aren't going to win. Man, does that suck. And so we end up deciding to have uh, Tejo's sister go and give the invitation to Speed Racer because Tejo wasn't interested. So Tejo's sister gives the invitation to Speed Racer to go and do the Grand Prix instead. And so we end up having to where, oh my god, there's an investigation going on to see like if this is all good and right and whatever. And we eventually have it to where like the investigative people are just like, oh no, it's all good. Like everything is like all the dots are dotted, or all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So like this is perfectly fine for Speed Racer to get into the Grand Prix or whatever the heck that this big match is. So we end up having Speed Racer making it into this race, and we have it to where Royalton is just like, like teeth are chattering, and everybody's like, oh my god, the greatest thing in human possibilities is happening right here. Like, Speed Racer is in this race, and everybody's just like, oh my god, everyone's going crazy, everyone's going wild, and everyone's excited about this race now because it's like, oh my god, like this race is going to be a colossal battle and so on and so forth. And so we end up having it to where Royalton is saying like, dude, like I do not want I don't even want Speed Racer to even go into this race. I don't even want him to even go into the locker room. And so we end up having them trying to figure out and conspire to try to get Speed Racer out of this race. And it just doesn't work out. Speed Racer goes into the race. We also have figured out where Taijo, I guess, was to be a part of some race uh, because Taijo ended up getting sick. Uh, but then, so interesting enough, we end up having uh, Christina Ricci's character in the place of, or Trixie, in the place of Tejo at one point, and then eventually we end up having like John Goodman fighting a bunch of ninjas bizarrely in this movie, and then like Tejo and all of the uh, like Speed Racer family end up going and fighting off these guys and beating them up, and then Tejo ends up getting back into his car, and then everybody ends up all going off to continue to re-race and so on and so forth. I thought that was the most bizarrish part of this movie. But moving on, so we end up having it to where and in the one match where to where Tejo ends up winning, Trixie was in her helicopter watching over Speed Racer the whole entire time, like spotting him and telling him what is going on, which I thought was really interesting. But anyways, so and what I meant interesting is like, well, of course they're probably going to do that way anyways. Probably going to go on to do anyways. It was kind of interesting to see Speed Racer going into the exact same route of which that was supposedly going to, or had originally killed off his brother before, which immediately I was like, oh, okay, that's predictable. Just like, oh, okay, we're gonna have like Speed Racer be better than his brother, and to where even Racer X has to admit that Speed Racer is a really good racer, even way better than Racer X could possibly be. And so eventually we end up having it to where there are so many close moments where we are to reveal who Racer X is, and we end up having it to where even Speed Racer is assuming or assessing that Rex is Racer X. And when we eventually have Racer X take off his mask to reveal who he is, we end up having Speed Racer going, "Oh no, you're not my brother," and to just pull the wool over everyone's eyes, to just ha ha ha, you were thinking that this is going to be Rex this entire time. Well, anyways, swerve at the end of the movie, I guess. So we end up having it to where pushing on. So we have it to where this is a Grand Prix and whatever, and there should be no tricks or whatever going on within this race. And so we end up going on, and seemingly in desperation, Royalton's racer ends up going and tying his vehicle on to Speed Racer's vehicle, and to where we are to assess or to assume, oh no, well, Speed Racer isn't going to win this race, right? Because heaven forbid the good guys win, like always in every single movie, for the most point. So we end up having Speed Racer going well, okay, well, if I'm going to be tied to this other car illegally, then I am going to try and figure out where a camera is, so they can take a photo shot of this car being tied to mine, so there is proof that this guy is cheating. And so not only is this racer going to be kicked off of this race, but also Royalton is going to be in trouble as well for doing this maniacal trick scheme, whatever. So we end up having eventually Speed Racer eventually ends up getting free, but then eventually he ends up also stalling his car to where he can't exactly figure out exactly how to get it working again. And this goes into the Luke Skywalker Death Star one-shot moment, to where we have it to where Rex and Speed Racer in a flashback, Rex is telling Speed Racer, hey, just let things go, just kind of feel the speed, kind of feel the you know what to do, you got it, just let go and just feel the speed, feel the force, feel the and so we end up having to where Speed Racer is you know what, I gotta feel the force. I gotta use the force to figure this out. And so we end up having, of course, Pops is going in the stands, and he's like, dude, you have to kick it into fifth gear, and that's how you're going to be able to figure this whole thing out. And he doesn't have a mic on or whatever to solve this problem. And we end up having Speed Racer's mom saying, well, is that going to exactly work? And we have it to where Pops is like, yes. And so bizarrely, we end up having it to where Speed Racer in his force-like powers goes into putting into fifth gear, which makes this car work so well that he just careens through, gets back onto the race, just easily blows everybody out of the water to where everybody's like, yay, Speed Racer, of course, inevitably had to win because he had to. To where at the tail end of there, they end up in their victory, like their little victory area where they're all drinking milk, and they're like, yeah, we're drinking milk. Look at us, we're drinking milk. And so everybody's slugging milk with the award and so on and so forth. We have Royalton, who is just like, God, like, I am going to die. Like, I am going to be killed off by somebody. Because it seems that there is some people that are going to be after Royalton because he lost this race. And, like, this guy was trying to, like, rig everything humanly possible to try to get this thing to go. And there is Mr. Musha, like a thug like person that was just like, oh yeah, well, you lost, like, you're gonna die. So, going on into here, oh, this is out of the way. So, we end up having Racer X just looking on, watching on. And so we have the inspector telling Racer X, it's like, well, like, you're never really going to tell him the real truth now, are you, Racer X? And we end up having Racer X just going like, nah, I don't think I will. Because maybe sequel. But we end up finding out that Racer X had been Rex all along, and Rex had gone through cosmetic surgeries and all kinds of things to change his looks and to eventually become Racer X. Like, I was kind of rooting for it to be the entire time that the actual, like, inspector would have been Racer X, because in all actuality, that would have completely changed the movie to just been like, whoa, so, like, the inspector was Racer X because he didn't want to race anymore, and so on and so forth. Like, I think that would have been a much better ending, to just kind of, like, give us one unpredictable outcome instead of just straight up telling us, it's like, oh no, Racer X is legitimately Rex, and so that's why he's called Racer X, because it's basically like Rex. So with that said, yeah, we eventually have this nice little kiss between Speed Racer and his girl at the tail end of this movie. Everybody is to be happy and healthy and wealthy and excited about what is going to happen when the credits roll. So with that said, I think in my head I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.